So the word bhakti means devotion. Right? So, so bhakti yoga, the path of devotion, is designed for those people who are predominantly emotional in nature. Right? So they tend to feel their way through life rather than question, think, and analyze. They decide based more on their emotions and so on and so forth. So you'll see, or you'll find often that in organized religions, they tend to have they tend to be predominantly devotional in their approach. It's talking about having a particular faith in a prophet or a person. They don't stress quite so much the idea of thinking, reflection, and questioning, right? So this is unfortunate because religions, the organized religions, the way they're practiced today, they're not particularly religious. Right? The things that they are promoting, the way that they're trying to promote their religions, it's taking us in the opposite direction of where we need to be going. Right? It's not the case for everybody, but as a general rule. So when it comes to the devotional aspect of a practice, it's often mistaken for or misconstrued as different things. So it's often mistaken as blind faith. Right? So this is where you get into that idea where you're told something by an authority figure and you don't understand it, you don't question it, you disagree with it, and you're told you have to have faith. It's dogmatic. This is the dogma, this is the doctrine. If you're part of this faith, you have to believe it. Right? So any time that we function on blind faith, it's the opposite of the religious urge. Faith, in fact, the word faith implies that it's not blind when you understand what faith is. There's two definitions for faith that we often put together to try and get a good understanding of what faith is. The first is, he says, and this is more analytical, he says, faith is a belief in a thing I do not know until I come to know what I believe. Faith is a belief in a thing I do not know until I come to know what I believe. Right, so implicit there is the recognition that I'm accepting something as true, while at the same time recognizing that I don't know that it's true. That's what faith is. So there's a recognition that I'm accepting this is true, but I don't know for certain that it is true. The other definition that we use for faith is more poetic. He says, faith is the bird that feels the light and sings while the dawn is still dark. The bird feels the light and sings while the dawn is still dark. So that conveys the idea that faith is a feeling. It's something that lies in the emotions, in the mind. But if we understand genuine faith, at the same time that we believe it, we feel it, we know, I don't know it for certain. So blind faith is to know for certain. We become fanatic. So you approach someone who has a religious faith, you believe in God. Why? It says so in the Bible, it says so in the text. But how do you know? Because it says so. I know it. But this person completely lacks faith. The religious fanatic is not someone who functions too much on faith. They don't have any faith whatsoever. They have certain knowledge. But it's certain knowledge of something that they cannot prove. So you cannot have certain knowledge of the existence of God, because you can't prove it to yourself and you can't prove it to anybody else. So if you accept as true the existence of God, it's faith. You have to accept the notion that I accept it to be true, but I cannot prove it to be true. Then it becomes faith. So, the path of devotion is not blind faith. The other thing that it's often confused as is prayer as beggary. Asking for something. All right? There's a great quote by Emerson. He says, just as men's creeds are a disease of the intellect, he says their prayers are a disease of the will. So our will is diseased. So what that's saying is, if you want something to happen, what do? You want to become a yoga teacher, what do? You study, you practice. You put your own efforts in towards that. If you want something to happen, your will, your own efforts must go in to achieve that end. If our will is diseased, if it's atrophied, if it's weak, what do? Dear God, please let me pass my exams. We ask for something rather than putting in the effort to make it happen. Dear God, please take care of the refugees. Well, what are you doing about it? Oh, nothing. I'm going to get God to do it. We're not willing to put in any effort on our own behalf. And so what do? Well, we just pray. Dear God. So we either ask for something directly for ourselves, because we don't have that will and that capacity to put the effort in to make it happen, or we assuage our negative feelings. We make ourselves feel good by praying on behalf of others. So we pray for Paris, and we pray for Belgium, and we pray for Istanbul, and we pray for San Bernardino, but we don't do anything about it. And we walk away feeling good. We've achieved nothing. We've just made ourselves feel good temporarily. It's entirely self-centered. Prayer is never self-centered. Right? As we're talking about, the whole notion of yoga is the reduction of ego and egocentric desires. If we're praying to gain something, then we are satisfying egocentric desires. So the whole notion of prayer as asking, this is another thing, that this is not devotion. So then what is devotion? Okay. So one of the other things that's misconstrued, as I just want to touch on, is also mechanical rituals. So you go to a church, or you go to a temple, or you go to a mosque, or you go to a mandir, or whatever it happens to be, and there's ritualistic practices. You've got the eating of the wafer and the drinking of the wine. You've got the cracking of the coconut in the Hindu temple. You've got a range of different rituals that are continually performed. It's not just mechanically performing a ritual. It means nothing. Nor is it idol worship. You have a particular deity, or a prophet, or a saint, or something that you have a worship for that idol. You become attached to that idol. Again, it's a preferential. You're satisfying an emotional demand that you have. The whole thing is basically self-centered. Now, that's not that we shouldn't use all of these practices. By all means, pray. By all means, perform rituals. By all means, have a deity worship if you want to do that. But understand the essence of what the practice is trying to achieve. So we use this, there's a specific definition of devotion that he uses here. He says, devotion arises when the intellect fails to comprehend an unknown realm. Devotion arises when the intellect fails to comprehend an unknown realm. So the essence of devotion then is the effacement of the ego. It's the reduction of ego. Right? So Bhakti Yoga, in a sense, can be summarized as, I don't know. The other thing that we tend to do is we tend to have this egocentric feeling of I know. The thing is, we're not aware of it. When we have this sensation of I know, of feeling that we know something, we're not aware that it's present. It's like a blind spot. Right at this moment, there's a blind spot in your vision, but you're not aware of it. You can't see it. You can find it if you want. You do that whole, and there it is. But as you function on a daily basis, you're completely unaware of the blind spot. It's like blinking. All throughout the day, the world is being shut off for a moment. It goes completely black, but you don't notice it. You never notice the blinking. It's this kind of absence of awareness. When we have this egocentric feeling of I know what I'm talking about, We don't know that it's there. And so Bhakti Yoga is a way of recognizing our areas of ignorance. Now that doesn't just mean when it comes to mundane things like, so for example, I don't know everything there is to know about yoga. Poses, pranayama, how to correct a person, and so on and so forth. Absence of knowledge. We're not just talking about these sorts of things. We're talking about it on a much grander scale than this. Every moment we're functioning in ignorance. He talks about examining the crevices in the personality. This notion of, put it this way, you can hear my voice, you can feel the sun on your bodies, you can smell what's going on around you. How is it possible? How is perception possible? What makes it possible? You cut yourself. What happens? You feel pain, then what happens? Yeah, then what happens? It's bleeding, then what happens? You self-care. You don't have to self-care, the body does it for you. It heals. The moment you cut yourself, it heals. Do you ask for it to heal?
How does it do that?
I don't know.
How do you know it does that?
Cut yourself. Observe over the next 3 days. You just watch. Take a razor blade. Sterile one. Pain, bleeding. Okay, right. And just watch. Over a week. It heals itself. Did you ask for it? No. Can you make it happen? Can you make it not happen? How does it happen? I don't know. Nature just functions in this incredible way. How does it work? I don't know. So this is exactly what he's talking about. How are you capable of understanding what I'm saying? I make noises. And those noises make the hairs in your ears wiggle. And there arises in your mind understanding. How is it possible? I don't know. There's a world here, there's definitely something going on. That much we can say. There's something here. Why is there something instead of nothing? Why is there something? Why is there not just a big empty nothing? And how did it get here? And where's it going? I don't know. So once we start to examine the crevices in our personality, this is what he's saying. We have to recognize this sense of, my God, how is this all happening? Where's it coming from? I don't know. So it is a sense of surrender. This is the other word that is used when we talk about bhakti, surrender. So the analogy that we often use when we're talking about surrender is when you go to a doctor, you recognize your area of ignorance. I don't know medicine. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know how to figure it out. And I don't know how to make myself feel better. And so you surrender to the doctor's knowledge. You surrender your area of ignorance. There's a sense of humility. You defer to that person's greater understanding, that person's greater wisdom. So this is the idea of surrender. It's a recognition of I don't know. And there's another word that's sometimes used in conjunction with the idea of devotion, and it's ascharya. Ascharya. This word ascharya means wonderment. So it's a sense of awe. It's a sense of wonder. It's a childlike sense of being fascinated by and enamored by what you don't know. So it's like the old idea, you can imagine staring up at the stars when you're a young child. And you're just beginning to understand what they are, how far away they are, what they're made of. Someone started to explain to you these ideas. And the idea that something is, I don't know, 1,000 light years away, I don't know much about astronomy, but it baffles your intellect. You can't comprehend it. Because it goes beyond what your intellect can comprehend, you say, wow, amazing, ascharya, ascharya. So that sense of wonderment, that uplift, that's devotion. what happens is the more spiritually evolved we become, we gain that childlike sense of wonder more and more and more. So it's interesting, as we become more spiritually mature, we become more childlike. Not childish, childlike. So he talks about, for example, a person who is spiritually mature, they can, that same sense of wonderment, that sense of amazing, they go into those raptures when they start to peel a banana. Look at that fruit, how beautifully it's packaged, how protected the food is, how sterile, how sanitary it is, how perfect the whole thing is. And all you've got to do is this, and you've got it. It's not like you've got to crack a coconut. It's a pain to do, just banana. So a person who is spiritually mature goes into raptures when they peel that banana because they are struck by the sense of wonder. The less and less spiritually mature we are, the more we need these magnificent expressions of nature. So you see a sunrise, or you see the Himalayas, or you see Niagara Falls. Then you get a sense of awe and wonder. Elsewhere in the text he says you find these unspiritual extremists who need miracles. You need to see a miracle in order to get that sense of amazing, amazing. Because there's such a dense layer of ignorance that you can't penetrate through it. But when we start to develop ourselves, everything becomes wonderful.